This conference will now be recorded.
Yesterday, we were discussing about what is config map and what is secret. Right? Config maps and secrets are used to pass the configuration information, like something which is going to be changed for environment to environment. Right? We are going to pass to the pods with the help of config maps and secrets. Config map or secret can be created using YML file or using commands also, right? As we already discussed, right, config maps can be mounted as a volumes also. First, let's discuss about this application, how to pass key value pairs. Let me connect to this server. So now let's take any application, right? Maybe whatever this application. If you see, we are passing the values directly here, right? Instead of this, we can use config maps to pass the values, like here and here, right? So config maps can be created using command itself, or we can use YML to create imperative or declarative, something like this. Something like this. We can create a config map using command itself, something like this, or using YML, something like this. Using YML also you can create whatever way, something like this. This is imperative, this is declarative. So non-confidential information we can maintain as a config map. Confidential information you can create as a secret. That secret also can be created using command or using YML, something like this. If required, you can create multiple. If you have a multiple in key value pairs, I'm just giving one more thing. Like I can give multiple key value pairs. I can create multiple. In the command also, you can create multiple using command also. Something like this. Using command also, you can create multiple. Or using config, YML also, you can create multiple. We can create a config maps and secrets. And these config maps and secrets we can refer in the Kubernetes the pods, right? So that in whatever environment, right? Suppose today this is the value for dev environment. In the production environment, I can create a different config map. I mean to say different value. Suppose in dev environment, I can create something like this. In prod Kubernetes cluster, I can create a config map using command or using YML. Any of this way, I can create using command. You no need to use both. Either using command you create, or either using YML you create. I can create a different whatever values in my prod environment. Similarly, secret also in your production cluster. If I do this way, do I need to make any changes in my Kubernetes manifest to inject these values? If I'm referring from a config map or secret instead of hard coding here, do we need to make any changes? No. So let me do that. Now I don't want to hard code. What I will do, I'll create a config map. I'll create a secret. Using YML, I can create something like this. Using YML, I can create a config map. Whatever. If you want to have multiple key values, you can have multiple key values. But the confidential information, is it recommended to create as a config map like password or any other? No. For that one, what is the other object we have? We have a secret. Right? So I'm creating a config map and also I'm creating a secret, something like this. The type of the secrets. Kubernetes have lot of secrets, lot of types. Like this is APQ is nothing but like a base 64 encoding. Similarly, you have a Docker registry type secret, registry password, and you have service token secret. There are some types of secrets. So this is base 64 encoding. So if you see Kubernetes secrets, right? So Kubernetes secret is an object that contains some amount of data, sensitive data, such as password, token, right? Or keys. Such information might be put into the pod specification or into a container image. Okay. So using secret, you no need to include confidential data in your application code. You no need to hard code. You no need to include. You can refer. So we have a secrets, types of secrets, right? OPAQ, service account token, right? Docker config, right? So these type of secrets it supports. So here, this is basically user defined data, like a key value pair of data, we can define the secret. So I'm creating a secret. This secret I can refer in the my pod manifest. I can create a secret something like this using YML. Now I am creating, this is dev environment. I am creating these config maps and secret. But for production, I'll create a config map and secret, but whatever value. The value can be whatever it is. Here, what I will do, Here, will I hard code, or can I refer these values from the config map and the secret? In our pod manifest, we will refer. So instead of hard coding, we are saying value from config map key reference. Name is nothing but your config map name. This is my config map name. But without creating this config map, if I deploy, pod will come up. Suppose without creating a config map, without having a config map, if I refer the config map, will it work? Will pod will come up? It will go into the error, initialization error. Let me show that. Let me show that once. I'm not going to create a config map, a secret, but I will refer. We'll see what will happen. Now, this is the key. Now here, password is value from secret key reference, name of the secret. This is the name. And again, it has a key. Key is this one, the password. The key is, I'm referring it. Where is that? Here. Similarly, in the other place also, here, in the stateful set also, I don't want to hard code. So value from indentation should be proper. Okay. Something like this. And this one, I will say value from secret key reference, name, secret name, the name of the secret which you are creating. This one, this is the secret object name. Then the key in that secret, the key is password. The key, this one, this key. Now, let's suppose I'm not going to create this secret, but I am referring a secret. The secret is not available in the Kubernetes, that cluster. In that case, without creating a secret, will you be able to refer the secret? Will it work? Now I am referring a secret, but do I have a secret created? This secret? No. So it will not work, right? It will not work. Let me show that. If you see, first, do I have any config maps created in this namespace? This is created by Kubernetes for this might be used in some Kubernetes pods. Okay. But apart from this, do I have any config map? And this is also created by Kubernetes. It is used for internal, some other internal Kubernetes pod is using that. Now, I am trying to refer a secret, but that is not created. But when it comes to config map, I am creating in the YML. In the YML, I have a config map creating. So I am creating a config map. So stateful set, let me keep it as only one pod because it may go, the servers may go down because we don't have much resources. So the stateful set Mongo database I'm keeping as one pod. So let me apply this change. Let me delete first whatever I have and I will apply. But we can apply directly also. You can apply directly also. Since I'm referring deployment and stateful set, if there is any change, will the parts will be recreated with that change? Since I'm using a deployment and stateful set, if there is any change, will the parts will be recreated? If since I'm using deployment and stateful set, yes. So now I'm applying that one. Let's see what is happened. Config map is created. Now do I have a config map? This config map. Since this is a config map, if I describe the config map, will I able to see what is the data you have in the config map, key and its value? If I describe, can I see that information? Since it's a config map, plain text, it is maintaining in the plain text. Now you see the pods. You see the pods. What is the status? Create container config error. Why the pods are not coming up? Why it is not coming into running state? How can I troubleshoot? Troubleshooting also very important is. Now how can I troubleshoot? If I execute kubectl logs now, will I able to see any logs? First of all, logs are not generated because pod, once the pod is coming into the running state, or maybe it has came into running state and again it failed, then I can see the logs. But first of all, pod is not came into running state. Now will I able to see the logs? Kubectl logs. There is nothing. MongoDB, this is waiting to start. First of all, it has not started. Then can I use this command? Describe pod, this pod name, right? Describe the pod name. Now what is the error here? What you can see by looking at this, what it is saying? Secret not found. So we are referring a secret, but that is not created, right? That's why not only in that one, in these parts also we are referring that secret. In this deployment also I am referring that secret. So same error. Now I can create a secret using command I can create, or using YML, whatever way I want to create, I can create. I can create using command imperatively, something like this. Or I can create using YML, declarative, this way. So now let me create a secret. Now I created a secret. Now after some time you see, since the moment I created a secret, now it's, do you see, is it started? Is the pod is getting started now because it is able to find the secret which we are referring. Now do you see, is the pods is running now? Now same manifest can I deploy in other environments by creating a config map and secrets with different values in that environment? Yes, you have externalized the configurations. Now since it's a secret, if I describe the secret, will I able to see what is there in that? I'm describing the secret. Now, do you able to see what is your actual password? It is showing the key, but is it showing the value? So, what is the recommended way to maintain confidential information? The secrets. Okay. Now, if I am using any private repository also, suppose, let me show you. In the Docker Hub itself, we can create one private repository. They will allow you to create one private repo. If I am using private repository without authentication, will it able to pull the images? Without authentication, will we, do we able to pull the images? Now in the Docker Hub, they will allow you to create one private repository. You can manually go and click on create repository, go to your Docker Hub, login, create repository. So they will allow you to create private repository, but only one. You can select this one. But since I already have one private repository, it is not allowing me to create a one more repository. If you see, I already have one private repository. Which one? This one. This one. It's a private repository. Okay. Some image is there. Just name I have given as a private repo, but you can give whatever name, right? Suppose something like this. The name I have given it as a private repo, but you can give something like this. The name I have given as a private repo, but this is your registry name. That's it. The registry name. This is registry name. This is your repository name. It can be anything. You can give something like this, right? And it's a private repository. And it has one image, the tag. Now, if I try to deploy this image in my Kubernetes, will it able to deploy without authentication? The name is private repo. The tag is this, private repo. The tag is that. Now let me show that. Some name I am giving. That's it. What the file name can be anything. What I am doing instead of CP. Now here, let me refer that image. I am referring that image here. I am referring that image. The name can be anything. Let's consider this is the deployment name or whatever it is, whatever you want to give. Now, I'm referring a private image. Now, if I try to deploy this application, will it able to pull the image and create the containers? Let's see. Now you see. What is this? What is the error status it is showing now? Error image full. Why? How can I know what is the reason? Now I want to know what is the reason. How can I know? Image pull back of this error. Kubectl, again describe your pod. Describe the pod, whatever pod. Now what it is saying? Fail to pull the image, right? Error response from the daemon. Pull access denied. The repository does not exist, or maybe you need to do the authentication. Repositories exist, but the problem is it is saying the repository does not exist, or maybe may require Docker login. But do I have, do have a repository now? I have a repository, but what is the problem? Login. In that case, do I need to execute Docker login in all the servers, because we don't know parts will be scheduled in which node? Parts will be scheduled in which node, we don't know. In that case, do I need to execute Docker login in all the servers? Not required. Not required in all the servers. So here we need to create a secret. We need to create a secret for your Docker registry credentials. Why secret? Why secret? Because it's a credentials. Is it a confidential information? Since it's a Docker registry credentials, so we need to create a secret. Secret. Something like this. Something like this. Registry secret. So you can create a secret, something like this. Using the file itself you can create, or you use something like this. The command. You create a secret. kubectl create secret. But what type of secret we are creating? If you see here, as I told, there are multiple types of secrets. Opaque queue, Docker registry. Now what type of secret we are creating? Docker registry secret. Now this is the name. Whatever you can give, you can give here. Here you can give ABC or whatever. But they have given us registry credentials, REGCRED. That means registry credentials. You can give Docker Hub credentials, something like this, whatever you want to give. This is the secret name. Since it's a Docker Hub, you can leave this. You can leave this. By default, what is the registry it will authenticate if I don't provide? The Docker Hub or docker.io. Okay. Now your username. Your username is basically Docker hands-on, and whatever password, your password, and your email, just some email, something like this. I can create a secret, whatever password, right? Something like this, whatever password it can be. Okay. Now I'll create a secret with my information. Then your password, whatever password. Then this secret, once you create a secret, something like this, in your pod manifest, right? In your pod manifest, how do you refer? There is a one property called image pull secrets. Image pull secrets in your pod manifest under your pod spec. Whether you are creating a pod, if you are creating a pod under pod spec, If you are creating a deployment or whatever it is, here under your pod, template, under your pod template, under your pod spec, here under your pod spec, you can use one property. What is that property name? Image pull secrets. And that secret name, whatever name you have created, whatever name, that secret name. What is the secret name? Suppose here I have given something like this. Now, if I use this way, what Kubernetes does is, Kubernetes will send this confidential information to all the, wherever the pod is going to be scheduled, right? Wherever the pod is going to be scheduled, this, the username and password will be sent to the that respective server, kubelet. So that kubelet will use these credentials to authenticate. In that case, do I need to execute Docker login in all the servers? Do I need to execute Docker login in all the servers? No. You create a secret and you refer the secret. You pass that secret, image pull secret. This is to pull the image. So under your pod specification, this is my pod template. Under pod specification, image pull secret, something like this. So I don't want to reveal my password. I'll just stop the screen share for 1 minute, 1 second, and I'll create a secret. I'll execute this one with my actual password. Okay, I'll execute this one with my actual password. I'm stopping the screen share. Okay, let me share my screen back. So I created a, so still we are exposing our secrets in manifest, but in real time you don't do that. What you do, you refer as a, suppose you are trying to deploy using Jenkins. In Jenkins, can you define that as a variable securely? See, in the Jenkins, can you define some variables or some files securely in Jenkins and refer that one your pipeline? Refer that those secrets in your pipeline. So in your pipeline, you execute this command, but instead of hard coding, you can refer that whatever variable you have created Jenkins secrets. Like suppose you have created in the Jenkins, you have created some credential with credentials. So you can refer in your Jenkins pipeline. In Jenkins pipeline, you have something like this, but this one you pass it from the Jenkins confidential information. In that way, in the source code or in the pipeline, will it reveal my password? So that's what, guys. You need to apply your knowledge, right? We are learning all these tools. So you need to apply. Well, when you are thinking, when you are doing the CI/CD, how can I hide this one? Right? You need to apply all the knowledge, whatever we discussed here. So now I have created. Now let me read apply. I have created a secret. I have created a secret. This Docker credential secret. Now I am in my pod manifest. in my pod manifest, I'm referring that secret, image pull secrets, right? I created a secret, I'm referring. Now let me read apply this application. There is some got a string, image pull secret is invalid type, got a string, expected map. Okay, so what does it mean here? Image pull secret, got a string and expected map. Sorry, I need to use name, hyphen name. I missed that. The name of the secret, right? I missed that one. So hyphen name, the name of the secret which you created for a Docker secret. Now let's see, will it able to pull? Now it is terminating the previous one because I am using that deployment strategy as recreate. I was using deployment strategy as recreate, so it is terminated the old one and it is creating a new one. Now this time, do you see, is it able to pull the image and run the containers? Now do you see, do I have any error pulling the images, which is part of private registry? We don't have any error. Now I have created a secret for the Docker registry credentials. I have created a secret. If I describe also, will I able to see? I am describing this secret. Now can I see anything? What is my username? What is my password? No. So this is how you can use the secrets. Secrets for your applications, secrets for the credentials, your Docker Hub credential, I mean to say Docker registry credentials. Not only Docker Hub. Suppose you are using Nexus, you are using JFrog. In that case, can I use this? But in that time, what I will do? Username and this will be there, and also here your server. Suppose I am using Nexus. In that case, do I need to give my Nexus if it is running on HTTP or HTTPS? That Nexus IP address, I mean repo, or suppose it is running on some domain host nexus dot suppose tcs.com. So do I need to give in that case if it is a different repo other than Docker Hub, right? So if your image is something like this, your image is part of this one, you have a separate image, separate repo, this is your image. Here I will give that this one, only this one, and the respective username and password. Okay. So that is how you can create secrets for the Docker registries. Now hope everyone is clear, guys, how to authenticate private image, I know, with the Docker private registries. This is how you can use. Now let's try to understand the next topic. We have a liveness probe and readiness probe. But before going to that liveness probe and readiness probe, I want to show one example how to use config map as a value. How to use config map as a value. So I'll take this image, one image. Let's take a Tomcat application where I have a Tomcat root application also. I'm going to take this application. I'm going to take this application. Just to give an example, how to mount files also, I mean to say how to use config map as a value, I'm taking this application. So I'm referring this image, Tomcat image. This Tomcat image has a Tomcat root application also, the Tomcat manager application. Now suppose the Tomcat manager application is part of that image, and will I have a Tomcat users.xml in the Tomcat users.xml file? Now I want to add a Tomcat users. While creating a pod, I want to have a Tomcat users. In that case, what I can do, right? Let me show something like this. Let me first deploy that application. I think this is the same image, whatever image I deployed, right? This private image, I think it has that. ls, let me see the current working directory. Okay, user local tomcat ls conf. I have a tomcat users.xml in that container, in that pod. Let me see the content conf. Now this is the file. Now I don't have any user, everything is commented. Now can I create a config map with this file content, and can I mount the config map to this pod so that whatever I have in the config map file, will it be reflected in this file once I do that? At the runtime, you can inject the files also to your pods. Then how to do that? How to do that? Config map as a file, right? So let me modify this one only, this image only. Now what I can do, I am going to create a config map. If you feel that is confidential, can I create as a secret also? Can I mount the secret also? If the file content is confidential, can I create a secret? Can I mount the secret the way I am going to mount the config map? Yes. So I'm creating a config map, API version v1 kind. What kind of object? Config map, metadata, name of the metadata, name. You can give something like this, Tomcat users, something like this. Now here, config map as a file, right? Yesterday we discussed, right? Config map. So config map, we can create a key value pair the way I have created this way, key value pair, and also the files, something like this, file content. Guys, in the same config map, can I have a key value pair and also file contents if required? Yes, you can do that. Okay. Now I'm going to create a file content, something like this. So data, then under the data, I'll say tomcat-users.xml, then this pipe symbol, something like this, colon, that then space, pipe symbol, then your data here, the tomcat data. Like let me take some content. this one. Let me take this one. I'll modify this one. So whatever you want to have, something like this. I'm removing all the comments, something like this. Tomcat, right? So username is Tomcat, password is Tomcat, something like this. What are the roles we have, guys? I think Tomcat, admin. There is a role called admin, manager, manager GUI, admin GUI, right? Admin GUI, manager GUI, something like this, right? So Tomcat, username is Tomcat. Let's say password is this. Password I'm giving as a password, and I can give the roles here, comma separated, admin GUI and manager GUI, something like this. Something like this. Now with this file content, I'll create a config map here. Under this, something like this. But make you have indentation proper, I mean to say. Something like this. So something like this. This is the file content. Now I'm creating a config map with file. Then in my container, in my pod, can I inject that file as a value? That file also as a value here for this container. So what do we have? We have two things. Values at the container level, sorry, the pod spec level. Then within the container, what do we have? Value mounts. Value mounts. Now values. I'll say name, Tomcat, users, config, something like this. Value name. Then here, what I'll say? Config map, something like this. I'll refer. I created a config map, right? So I can use that as a value. Values name, the config map type value, and config map name. What is my config map name? This is my config map name. The config map name. Then that may have a multiple files, right? That may have a multiple files, right? I can create a config map with multiple file contents also, like this. This is one file. This is one file, right? So here, whatever files you want to list, you can list, something like this. Something like this. Now, what is the file? Do I have this file in the config map created? No, right? I need to update. So this is the name. This is the name. Path also can be same. Path also can be same. Now here, can I mount that file? Value mounts. Name. So name. So how can I mount values with value mounts? What should be common? What I need to give here? The name. whatever value name I have created. Did you guys forget everything? Or you remember? The name of the value, right? So the name of the value, whatever you have given there. So this name. Now mount path. So since it's a file, I will give mount path that complete user local tomcat within that. So what is this? My tomcat is part of this directory in this container, right? User local tomcat. Then within that, what is the folder? Conf. Then what is the file name? Something like this. But since we are mounting a file, we need to use one more option. Since we are mounting a config map file, right? We need to use one more option. There is a option called subpath. Subpath. That subpath is nothing but your file name. The subpath is nothing but your file name. So even though you have given mount path, here you need to give subpath because we are mounting the file. Now when I do this, can I see this data, this content in my pod, in this folder, in this file? Using this way, can I inject the configuration files also using config map as a value to my pods at the runtime? I'm just giving for a tomcat users.xml. Similarly, you have some configuration files, maybe server.xml or application.properties or application.aml. Suppose you are running a database, you are creating a database pods will have some configuration files. So whatever files, can I inject those files also to my pods using this config map files and as a value? Now, do I need to make any changes going inside the pod? Do I need to update this file? Not required. Okay. So now let me deploy this one. First, let me do the dry run. To validate whether my YML is proper. It's perfect. Now let me apply. Now since I have used deployment and deployment strategies recreate, do you see is it deleting the old pods and recreating the new pods? Now I have created a config map. Now if I see that file now, if I see that file, that cat, the current working directory is already user local tomcat. So within that I have a conf, I have a tomcat-users.xml. Now do you see whatever config map file content I have created, now is it injected to your pod? So will it be helpful for your applications to be deployed with whatever configurations, environment variables you want to deploy? So do we have these kind of features in the Docker? Config maps, secrets. There are options. There are options to pass environment variables. There are options to pass the files also, but it is not much user friendly. So we will use all these kind of things in the real time, guys. We will use all these kind of things in the real time project. I mean to say config maps, secrets, and again config maps as a values, secrets as a values. We can use all these things. Now hope everyone is clear what is config map and what is secret, how I can use config map and secrets. In the interview, they'll ask all these questions. Now let's try to understand the next concept, liveness probe and readiness probe. There is a one more concept called liveness probe and readiness probe. What is this liveness probe? What is the readiness probe? Why it is useful? Right? Let's try to understand. So, liveness probe, readiness probe. Liveness probe and readiness probes are used to control the health of an application running inside the pod container. Guys, by default, does Kubernetes will check? Siddharth is asking, sir, in deployment YAML file, if you want to use recreate strategy for QA rolling update for prod, can we do using single deployment file? No, because you are mentioning deployment strategy. These config maps and secrets are for your applications, right? Environment variables, files, right? So the deployment strategy you are going to mention in your deployment YAML, you can't do that using single YAML, But what you can do, you can have some kind of a placeholders in your CI/CD pipeline. You can replace that line using SCDs, right? You can do that way. But when we go for a Helm chart, that is possible. When we go for a Helm charts, right, that is possible. I will explain what is that Helm chart in the later sessions. But here also, what I am trying to say, have a placeholder. In your deployment file, you have a strategy, some placeholder, and using SCD in your pipeline based on the environment, can I replace that file, content, or have it two files itself, separate files based on the environment? Can I use appropriate file to apply in that respective environment? Whatever way you want to do. Now let's try to understand this concept. The interviewer asks specifically using a single file. In the single file, right, you need to have some kind of a placeholders. Then you need to replace that piece of code before applying based on the environment. But when we go for a Helm chart, that is possible. Now let's try to understand what is liveness probe and what is readiness probe. By default, does your Kubernetes will check whether the pod is running or not? I mean to say process is running or not, or will it check whether the application is it actually healthy or not? By default, does Kubernetes will check whether the process is running or not, or will it check the actual application whether it is responding, whether it is working or not? By default, what it will check? How Kubernetes will identify by default whether the whether the pod is running or not properly? By default, it will just check the process, whatever process. Suppose in case of Tomcat web application, it will just check the process, whether Tomcat process is running or not. But will it actually check whether the application is healthy, whether it is working properly? By default, no. But sometimes there might be a cases your pod is running, but application is not responding. Your pod is running, but application is not responding. The container, the actual application is not responding. You have some special issue, some type of issues. Pod is running, our application inside the container is not running, not working, due to some memory leakage, or CPU utilization is very high, or is that there is a deadlock situation, application deadlocks. Your application is not responding to the request. It will stuck in a error state. In that case, will you get a response from the application even though your pod is running, but there is some memory leakage, CPU usage, or there is a deadlock? In that case, do you get a response from your application? No, right? Pod is running, but your application is not working. So in that case, if we restart the pods, it may solve the issue. I mean to say, if you restart the containers, it may solve the issue sometimes. Suppose your application is not responding. If you restart the containers, restart the pods, it may solve the issue. But will it restart by default? If your application is not working, Kubernetes will restart? Because the process is running. Kubernetes will just check the process, whether the process is running or not. It will not restart. Then how can I perform some kind of a health check on my application? And if the health check is failed, the Kubernetes will restart the container. Then how can I perform some kind of a health check on my application? If the health check fails, then it will restart the container. That is where this probes comes into picture. This probes comes into picture. Liveness probe and readiness probe. Liveness probe and readiness probe. So liveness probe. Liveness probe checks the health of the application, right? For some reason, if the liveness probe is failed, what it will do? If the liveness probe is failed, what it will do? It will restart the container. Liveness probe, if liveness probe is failed, it will restart the container, which may fix the issue. Then what is this readiness probe? What is this readiness probe? What it does? Suppose there is an issue in your application is not responding. So is it a, suppose your application is not responding. Suppose if your service start routing the traffic to that one, do you get a error? Since your application is not working properly, is it a good idea to route the traffic to that pod by service? We have a Kubernetes service, it will route the traffic. But if there is an issue, is it a good idea to route the traffic to that one if it is not working? Then how can service knows that? How to let service know that it should not route the traffic because it is not healthy? So that is where readiness probes comes into picture. So this type of probe is used to detect if container is ready to accept the traffic. If the readiness probe is successful, then only the endpoint will be reflected in the service. If the readiness probe is successful, then only the service will have an endpoint. If the readiness probe is failed, it will remove the endpoint from the service. If the readiness probe is failed, it will remove the endpoint from the service. So if it removes the endpoint from the service, the service will route the traffic to that failed pod, that unhealthy pod. So readiness probe is used to detect if container is ready to accept the traffic. If the readiness probe is failed, which means the application is not healthy, so service will not route the traffic to that pod because that readiness probe will delete the endpoint from the service. So it will not route the traffic. To simulate this issue, let me show that. Let me demonstrate this. To simulate this issue, I have this application, and to access that application, we created a service. This is the service port, node port. Now let's access that one from outside. Let me access that port from outside. That application. So this has a Tomcat homepage, this application. Now I have added the Tomcat users also using config map. Can I, this has a Tomcat manager application. I have added Tomcat that, users also. Like I know I can use that username and password, but which we will not use in real time. Okay. Now let's take this application. I think that has this application only, not Java-web application. I think it might have Java-web app, or which one? Let's see. Let's see what var file I applied in that image. I'm not sure. Okay, this one, Maven-web app. This application I applied. Okay. Now it is working. But let's assume I have two pods. Let's assume something went wrong. That service has 2 points. That service has 2 endpoints. kubectl. That service has 2 endpoints. Now let's assume something went wrong with one of your pod. I'm intentionally deleting this var file just to demonstrate, just to simulate the scenario. I'm intentionally deleting this var file. I'm intentionally deleting this var file just to simulate the scenario. kubectl exec rm web apps. I'm removing that var file. Now I removed that var file. I removed that var file. Now is my application running in that container, that pod? Now I intentionally removed just to simulate the issue. Now does our pod will get restarted in this scenario? Is your pod is getting restarted in this scenario? If you see, is my pod is getting restarted? So Somnath is saying yes. It is not going to restart because did I add a liveness probe and readiness probe? Did I add a health checks as of now? As of now, I have not added health checks. So will it get restarted? Will it knows that whether your application is healthy or not? No. I have not added the health checks. I'm just showing the problem now. Now do you see is your pod is getting restarted? And now if I keep accessing that application, still it has 2 endpoints, but in one of the pod application is not healthy. Now will I get 404? If the pod request goes to other, if the request goes to other pod, right? You try to access, some of you may get 404. Some of you may get 404. because the request is going to other pod. The request is going to other pod. If service is request is going to other pod and this application is not running. Now, for my system, it is going to this only, but for others, maybe it will go to other pod. Or let me show here itself. Let me do this curl on the service. I'm doing curl -v this service IP. Service port is 80, so I'm not giving anything. I'm trying to access using this cluster IP service. maven-web-app. Now here, am I also getting 404? Now I'm trying to access via service. Service has two endpoints, two pods. Service has two endpoints, two pods. Do you see? It is going to one of the pod where my application is not running. Am I getting 404? 404 not found. Right? Sometimes the request may go to one pod, sometimes request may go to another pod. Right? So it is going to, now I am getting errors. Right? So sometimes it is going to one pod, sometimes it is going to another pod. But is your pod is getting restarted since it is not healthy? Is service is stopping the traffic to that one? Still service has two endpoints. Still service has two endpoints. So how to handle these kind of scenarios? Sometimes your pod will be healthy, but your application is not running properly. Process is running, but application is not healthy. Kubernetes will check by default what? Only the process. Now Tomcat process is running, there is no issue. The Tomcat process is running, there is no issue. So that is where we can use these liveness probes and readiness probes. Liveness probe and readiness probes are used to control the health of an application running inside a pods container. Liveness probe checks the health. If the health is failed, the liveness probe is failed, what it will do, guys? If the liveness probe is failed, what it will do? It will restart the container. It will restart the container. It may fix your issue. If the container is getting restarted, it may fix your issue. And readiness probe. What readiness probe will do? If the readiness probe is not successful, will it reflect the endpoint in the service? Will that pod endpoint will be reflected in the service if it is not successful? No. If the readiness probe is failed, it will remove the endpoint from the service. If it is successful, then only it will reflect in the service endpoint. So if it is failed, readiness probe is failed, the service will route the traffic to that pod. Whatever pod has that readiness probe failed? No. So this is how you can use liveness probes and readiness probe. But how many types of liveness probes, readiness probes? How can I check the health? Right? We can perform three types of liveness probes and readiness probes. We can perform three types of liveness probes and readiness probes. You can use whatever. One is HTTP GET, another one is TCP socket, one more is command. You can you can perform HTTP GET call to check whether your application is working or not. I can give my path, my application path. So if I don't get the response from this context, this application path, what does it mean? If I don't get the response from this context, this application path, what does it mean? If you don't get the response 200 status code or some success status code, application is not healthy. You can execute a HTTP GET and check, or you can execute any Linux command and check. In case of Linux command, what is the success code? How we know that whether the command is executed successfully or how it is executed, what is failed? So it will return zeros and ones. It is going to check container only. Pod is nothing but a group of container, Taranjit. In the pod, nothing is running directly. Pod will have a containers. Liveness probe and readiness probe will check the health of the containers only. But each will be used for different purpose. I already told liveness probe what it does. Liveness probe will just check whether application is healthy or not. If it is not healthy, it will just restart the container. But what readiness probe does? If the readiness probe is failed, what it does? Will it restart the container? If the readiness probe is failed, if I have only readiness probe, it will not remove the pod. It will remove the endpoint from the service, which means unless until your readiness probe is successful, it will not reflect in the service. It will not reflect in the service unless until the readiness probe is successful. It will not reflect in the service endpoints. That pod will not reflect in the service endpoints because the pod is not healthy, so it should not send the traffic. That's what we discussed, the liveness probe and readiness probe. Now it will support three types of health checks: HTTP GET, command, TCP socket, right? You see, liveness probe and readiness probe, very, very important, guys. We will use all these things, whatever I am explaining here. If you want to just check the port, suppose TCP socket, suppose you are not running any kind of a web, application, APIs, web application or REST application, you are not running. So it is kind of a database or something else. In that case, I need to just check whether the port is accepting the traffic or not, whether the port is healthy or not, whether the port is accepting the traffic or not. So you can perform liveness probes and readiness probes, something like this. Executing a command and check. So you can execute the command, something like this: exec, liveness probe, exec, command, whatever command you want to execute. And if this command is successfully executed, what does it mean? Without any error. So if the command in the Linux, what it does, if the command is successfully executed, what it will return? It will return 0, right? So if it is returning 0, what does it mean? What does it mean? It is executed successfully. There is no issue. In that case, will it consider this liveness probe is successful if this command is executed without any error? If this is failed, it is not returning 0, then will it consider that is not healthy? You can execute whatever command. In that case, if it is not executed successfully, what liveness probe will do? It will restart that container, respective container. It will restart. Okay. We can perform a liveness probe using commands exec or HTTP request. Suppose I have some application running inside that container, some web application or some REST API. In that case, can I perform HTTP GET to check the health of that application? So here HTTP GET path. What is this path? Whatever context, whatever application path you want to check. Is it always this health, something like this, or this is based on what application is running, what context you want to check in this container, this path? That path is depends on your application context. And what is this port? What is this port? Your container port, on which port the container is running. So this HTTP GET will make a call on this port, on this context, right? If you want to pass some headers also, you can pass headers. Okay. So if it is not returning success code, any code greater than or equal to 200 and less than 400 indicates success. Greater than 200 and less than 400, it indicates success, right? And any other code outside of this one, suppose I am getting a 404. What does it mean? 404. What does it mean? Is your application will be running if you are getting a 404? So in that case, what this liveness probe will do? What this liveness probe will do? If the liveness probe is failed, what it does? It will restart the container, which may fix your issue, right? And also we have a TCP live, socket. So what it does, if I do this kind of check TCP socket, so this is quite similar to HTTP check, but it will just check. This will attempt to connect to port 8080. It will attempt to connect to port 8080. If it is not able to connect, what does it mean? It is not able to reach that port 8080. What does it mean? It is not healthy. So it supports these kind of health checks based on your usage, based on your use case, based on your requirement. You can use this type of health check TCP socket, or you can use HTTP GET type of health check, or you can use this executing a command type of health check. And what is this initial delay seconds, period seconds? You see something like this, initial delay seconds, period seconds. What is this? Period seconds. Period seconds. What is period seconds? How frequently it has to perform the health check. Guys, am I not audible? Somnath is saying voice is not audible, sir. Am I not audible? Or am I audible? Okay, I am audible. Okay. So period seconds is basically how frequently it has to perform the health check. Suppose if I have given period seconds as 5, how frequently it will perform this health checks? It will execute this liveness probes every 5 seconds. What is this initial delay seconds? What is this initial delay seconds? The moment the pod is created, if it start performing the health check, will it work initially? Does your application will take some time to come up? Your pod will take some time to come up, right? So initial delay seconds is, suppose if I have given initial delay seconds as 30 seconds, what does it mean? Once the pod is scheduled, once the pod is created, it will wait first 30 seconds. After 30 seconds only, it will perform the liveness probe. Now, I can apply a liveness probe on this application. I can apply a liveness probe on this application, this container, right? So I can perform all these things. How can I do that? I can perform the liveness probe. Something like this. The manifest file I have given for your example here itself. Something like this. But you need to make sure you give the correct path, right? Something like this. Guys, if I give something like this, is my application, this is my application context in this container? No, right? So I'm saying different maven hyphen web hyphen app, maven hyphen web hyphen web hyphen app. Now I have given initial delay seconds, timeout seconds, period seconds. What is this timeout second? Even though your application is running, if it is not returning the response, if it is not returning the response within 1 second or within 2 seconds, it is taking lot of time. Can I consider that as also failure? If it is taking more time, timeout. I can apply all these things. Okay. Now let me do this. Let me apply this now. Did I update it properly all the way? Yeah. Now let me apply this cube. Do we need to use both or only one? You can use only one, but if will it remove the endpoint if I don't use the readiness probe? Will it remove the endpoint from the service if I just use only liveness probe? It will restart the container. It will add that it will restart the container. It may fix the issue, but if I don't use that readiness probe, right, what will happen? It will not remove. If the application is not healthy, it is not going to remove that from the service. So ideally we will use both. Now I am using the liveness probe and readiness probe. Now why it is in pending state now? Running. Even though it is running, why it is not showing here ready? Why it is waiting for what it is waiting for to show it as ready here? Even though it is showing as running, when it will be shown ready here? Unless until your readiness probe is successful. Unless until your readiness probe is successful, will it shown it as a ready and will it reflect in the service? No. Unless until the readiness probe is not successful, it will not show. Now the readiness probe is successful, that's why it is showing here. And here it is still not successful, that's why it is not showing here. Now the readiness probe is successful and it is reflecting. If I describe SVC, now I can see both the endpoints because readiness probe is successful. Now let me do the same thing. I'll delete the application intentionally, that var file intentionally from one of the pod. Intentionally I am going to remove. In this case, since we have a liveness probe and readiness probes, is it going to restart the container and also is it going to remove that from the service, that endpoint wherever it is failed? RM web apps maven hyphen web hyphen app dot var. Now you observe, after some time, I can see one restart here. Restarts as one. Who does that restart? kubectl describe SVC. Let's watch this service. As of now, it has 2 points. After some time, it will be only 1 point. It will keep reflect. I am watching this one. So every 2 seconds, it will be executed. Now, why it has only 1 point? Who removed that one point? One endpoint automatically that got removed. Who removed that endpoint? Why it has removed? Why it has removed? Because the readiness probe is failed. The readiness probe is failed. Now again it has added. How come again it got added? Because we have a liveness probe. We have a liveness probe. It has restarted. Since the container is restarted, that might have fixed your problem. Now do you understand the importance of liveness probe and readiness probe? Now do you see restart is one, restart is one. Who restarted this one? Does the readiness probe restarted? Which controller handles the kubelet which is running in that respective node? The kubelet which is running in that respective node, it will execute those liveness probes and readiness probes. Can I use liveness probe and readiness probe if I am creating pod directly? Is it applicable only for deployment, or can I use for any object like a pod, deployment, replica set, daemon set, stateful set? It is applicable for any Kubernetes object case. Whatever you are defining, in your pod templates, this is pod template, right? Your pod template, the liveness probe, readiness probe, volumes, volume mounts, and also environment variables, and also the resources, resource request and limits. This will be applicable for any object like a pod, deployment, anything. Hope everyone is clear what is liveness probe and what is readiness probe, how it works. Okay. In the interview also they will ask, how do you perform the health on the application, health checks on the application in your Kubernetes? Using what concept you will perform the health check on the applications in the Kubernetes? The liveness probe and readiness probe. Okay. Tomorrow we'll continue, guys. Tomorrow also I'll take a class. Okay. Tomorrow also I'll take a class. Tomorrow we'll discuss about HPA, horizontal pod autoscaler. Kubernetes supports the health check on the application only using liveness probe and readiness probe. Kubernetes. But if you want to monitor, you want to get a notifications, you want to get a mails, if your application is not healthy, in that case you need to use monitoring softwares. If you want to get a notifications, mails, alerts, right? In that case, you need to use a monitoring software. Using monitoring software, you can monitor your application. You will get a notification, alerts. But this is just to handle the failures within the Kubernetes. Okay, guys, that's it. We'll continue tomorrow on this topic. Where is your WAR file, Ruban? Right? Where is your WAR file? You can only tell the answer. Where is your WAR file? Your WAR file is part of the image itself. So container is deleted and recreated. Does it mean whatever you have in the image, will it be part of that new container? So that's how the WAR file got into the container. Thank you, guys. We'll continue tomorrow. I'm stopping the session. We'll continue tomorrow.